Hello, good morning. Welcome everyone to our first research corner. And we're just coming back now from a webinar on education chatter. And we were interviewing this very interesting speaker on skateboarding and education. And so now we are going to start, as I said, with our first research corner. And I'm going to give the word to the chair of the ELNE Research Committee, Mika.
So welcome to this webinar on my behalf too. The overarching topic that we have for this year ELNE work is transforming schools into learning communities. And in this webinar, which is one of the three for this purpose, on research, we are looking into the transformation of the learning context and environments. And we will have three presenters with us. That's Katalin Tóth-Pjeczka, who is a researcher and lecturer at the ELTE Institute of Education at Eötvös-Loránd University in Hungary, a researcher at the Learning Institute of Matthias Corvinus Collegium, and an educational developer at Obuda University. With her, we have around 10 minutes. It's an interview mainly. The second part of this webinar will be with Ana Cristina Torres. She's a researcher and teacher at the University of Porto in Portugal. She is currently working at the Center for Research and Intervention in Education and has participated in various projects, including two Erasmus Plus projects, COSI.ed and ES Garden. And the latter one is something that we focus on today. And with Ana Cristina, we will also have the research showcase as an interview. And then our third presenter will be Fergal McCarthy from Kinsale Community School, Ireland. And the focus of that one is schools as research institutes for practice. And it will be a presentation. And we end this webinar with a panel discussion where we have a couple of questions for all the three presenters on the topic of the symbioses between learning communities and research. And I, as the moderator of the webinar, exactly as Valentina said, come from the research committee for ELNE and originally from the University of Jyväskylä in Finland, and there from the Institute of Educational Leadership. And please be active in the chat too, and we try to have time for us also to handle with comments and questions in the chat. Okay, Katalin, are you ready?
Yes, thank you, Mika. Hello, everyone from Budapest. I'm Katalin Tóth-Pjeczka from the Eötvös-Loránd University and Obuda University as well. Just one slide or two I would love to show you. Can you see?
The first question for the slides is for you to briefly explain what your research was about and what were the main findings. And after that, we go deeper in your research, and please do continue.
Okay. Well, the methodology behind our research is that we had inter-university cooperation here. Mixed method research was used. Eötvös-Loránd University had two very big nationwide representative research. One of them is Innova, It's about educational innovations. And the second one, the models of teacher learning, focuses on the teacher's professional development and learning. And there was a third research, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, led by the Óbuda University. And these three researchers were also making qualitative case studies. And we met at one point in one school in the east-north of Hungary. And this is a disadvantaged area. And there is a very interesting, specific, rare occasion when we could see a network-based school management model. And this is what we found here. I would like to show briefly that here the partnership outside of school was very, very important in the management of this school. Local society maintainers, schools and edtech companies, universities were all reached and connected to the school development. And there were filters used, what can come into the schools, and there is offline and online knowledge sharing platforms and practice for the teachers. So that's actually what we are going to go deeper into. Is it enough for the first slide?
Thank you, Katalin. And from the research committee's perspective, thank you for describing the methodology. We were interested in the transferability of the studies that we got, and methodology is one important part of that transferability. So very important for us. What also interested is us in the research committee was the absorption capacity that you were handling in your research. What is absorption capacity and what is its relevance in education based on your study?
Yes, in the innovation field, absorptive capacity is a very important characteristic of the development side. It is a characteristic about the school, how and to what extent it is able to get new resources. And by new resources, we mean money, infrastructure, digitalization, knowledge content, even new cognitive content as well. So it can be anything really that could have a long impact on the development of the school. So this is absorptive capacity, the acceptance of new ways, briefly. And it is something that characterize every school, and every school has absorptive capacity. The question is how big, how large, how intensive it could be, this acceptance of new impacts.
Thank you, Katalin. The third question, how can educational institutions acquire absorption capacity?
Yeah, it can, it depends a lot on the leadership, and it's not a surprise. The leadership normally focuses in education. Most of the education system, it focuses on the internal resources of educational development. But there is, and this case study shows the example that it is possible to reach out to different actors from different sectors. Not only the educational sector can be a useful resource. So the education of school leaders to show that it is a possible way is one way to improve the absorptive capacity of schools.
Thank you for the very holistic and systemic approach in general you've had in the study. Maybe I ask the question in the chat at this point. You had the figure in the PowerPoint presentation, and it included the maintainers. So there's this question, what are the maintainers? And thank you for the question in the chat.
In that specific school, the Greek Catholic Church is the maintainer. And it is a very important part, because if they could support that kind of improvement, then it is obviously a very important resource as well. But it is not only about the maintainers part. It is one part of the whole complex system.
Just to make it clear for myself, that could we say that the maintainers are like the education providers who organize everything, or?
No. Maybe I'm not using the right word for maintaining. The proprietor of the school. I mean, the public school is maintained by the state, and there are private schools maintained by different foundations, and in Hungary the church is also important maintainers.
Yeah, thank you, Katalin. And you know, I think I understood right, and I think you used exactly the right concept too. And thank you for having the question in the chat, and this discussion on the maintainers too. Going on, what did you find were the most resolutive solutions of educational institutions to the changing educational environment?
Yes, in our research, we found that most of the schools rely on the inner resources. And this school, what we are talking about, it's an elementary school. It is able to use the resources outside of the school, the network. It is due to the leadership, actually, who were used to be network building manager before he became the leader of this school. But he used this previous experience of his, and he started building up on not only on his own view, but used bottom-up initiations in the school. For example, Lego education. It came from an English teacher who had an idea to use Lego as an English language education tool, and then the school leader were asking the teachers to have to find resources from outside to have to develop this, and they find the education again. They find the Lego Education Center in Denmark, and they visited. I mean, a group of teachers who were interested. They visited the Lego Education Center, and they came back with a lot of inspiration. And nowadays, a couple of years later, it is not only the English language where they use the Lego as a tool, but they use in STEM education, they use it even in the history lesson. So it's spread because a bottom-up initiation was supported by the school leader. They found in their network, they built connections to outside resources, and they could enhance this improvement. And it was a very big, very strong effect and lasting effect in the school's life. If now you go into the school, you can see Lego buildings everywhere because children use it in different kind of lessons.
Thank you, Katalin. It's fascinating to listen how it started small, and with one subject, and then expanding. And I cannot be without thinking how the language teacher thought that his or her idea became started to spread out throughout the whole school, and it became everybody's something. Just great. The final question I have for you goes like this. What were your findings regarding stakeholder engagement in educational institutions? What specific stakeholders were involved, and what was their role? You've already told about these, but maybe specifying more. Yeah, thank you.
Different. For example, universities. They were obviously there are universities going out into the field for doing researches, but this school could use the connection to Obuda University to develop their own STEM education. And there were university teachers going, visiting the school and giving lectures there, or they were organizing student groups to go to university. So it was enhancing also the STEM education. This is one part. And the school leaders could get to edtech companies. And of course, they needed support from the maintainer to purchase. But they could reach much more than just the purchased tools. They could build up bilateral projects with edtech technology companies, and it really made the infrastructure of the school step on a higher level. So that was also, and one more thing, because it is also important to reach out to the local community. They were open enough to get the parents into the school. For example, in events where parents could show how to cook Hungarian goulash soup or something, and it became part of the school culture as well. And there is now a school kitchen where kids could practice this knowledge, these skills that comes from the parents. And it is important that the local community is part of the school's life now.
Thank you so much, Katalin. It's fascinating what research can reveal and make visible. Thank you so much, and I'm also happy that we didn't have any problems with internet, because when we were preparing for this webinar, we had some fears with that. It was just great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we move on to talk with Ana Cristina Torres about your research on ES garden, school gardens for future citizens. And my first question for you here too is for you to briefly explain what your research was about and what were the main findings. So welcome, warmly welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mika. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ana Cristina Torres. I'm a researcher at the University of Porto. I actually also have a few slides to introduce the research, at least to give an idea. So the e-school garden project, School Gardens for Future Citizens project that I'm here to briefly speak about, well, it was not actually a research project. I must present it as it was. It was an Erasmus Plus strategic partnership in school practices exchange, and it was actually coordinated by my colleague, Professor Sarah Blanc, from the Universitat Politécnica de Valencia in Spain, and it engaged 3 universities from Spain, Romania, and Portugal, and 4 schools from Spain, Portugal, Slovenia, and Greece, and 2 enterprises in the field of agriculture. As it was an Erasmus Plus strategic partnership, we were focused mostly on developmental activities with the schools and for the schools. We wanted to support teachers and schools in producing and sustaining school gardens as hands-on and community engaging educational tools of the schools. We also wanted to develop knowledge and pedagogical expertise in promoting learning with digital tools associated with the school gardens, in collaborative and project-based activities with primary and secondary school students. And we wanted also to transform school gardens into knowledge-breaking contexts for the development of education for sustainability, also with a focus on inclusive learning environments in local communities. We have these outputs that are available on the website. I'm not going to detail all of them, but there is a lot of supporting materials and learning activities guides, because throughout the 2 years and a half of the project, the teachers in the schools designed, implemented, tested, and improved learning activities with their students and with the consultancy and guidance from the universities and the other experts in the project. And we have a total of 16 learning activities uploaded in our website, 4 from each school. Everything is in English, though with very contextual issues from each of the schools, Greece, Portugal, and Spain and Slovenia. But the thing is, myself, as part of the University of Porto, and our team, we were quite active in the part of the monitoring of the project's processes and impacts. So we coordinated that part of the project, and throughout the project we were focused on collecting information about the collaboration between students, teachers, and partners, effectiveness of the project's objectives in terms of personal achievements of the students, the European dimension, European awareness dimension of the project, since we had a lot of partners from different schools. For instance, digital competence was also one of the dimensions in terms of effectiveness. We also were interested in some features of innovative management of curricula through the learning activities that were produced. mostly in how the digital tools were integrated in these learning activities with the school gardens and project-based pedagogy. We also were interested in the interdisciplinary dimension of how the teachers manage the curricula to integrate the activities. And also, we had a few elements of evaluating the impact on sustainability of the project. How did we do that? We mostly passed on online surveys to participating students, pre and post, though it wasn't an experimental study because we didn't have a control group. We just studied the progresses in the participating students. We also passed on some online surveys to the partners, to every participating partners, and we did a documental analysis, mainly qualitative, of the learning activities that were produced as an output, and of the reports of the teachers about who participated in the activities, who collaborated, which features in terms of pedagogy, materials, resources, digital tools were used.
Thank you so much,
yeah.
Ana Cristina. And you said that it was not really a research project, but to me, what you were just describing was a lot of research, and thank you for connecting the practice and research so beautifully. We have around 4 minutes for us, so a few detailed questions for you based on the research that you made on the project. Firstly, what do you think are the main barriers to raising environmental awareness amongst young people?
Well, what we detected, basing in our evaluation device and crossing it with two circumstances, that, of course, literature on environmental awareness, and the fact that the practices in this project were caught up by the pandemic-induced lockdowns. So a lot of the project went on with the students and teachers being at home, but we really felt that, and we know that the main barrier to environmental awareness, it's immensely described, is the lack of outdoor and nature-based activities from an early age. And that has to do not only with the education conditions and the lack of experiences on schools that bring students to the outdoors, but also it has to do with our spaces, our urban spaces, our urban lives that don't have much of the outdoor experience and contact with nature. Of course, there are other things like lack of knowledge, lack of motivation and self-efficacy, because people feel that they don't, that much of the behaviors, the attitudes that have to be interiorized by people are very individual, so they don't feel effective in their small changes. They need to see more collective changes in their environments. That's also a barrier. And I think these projects, these collective experiences with a specific space in the school, like the school garden, can really help with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. We still have time for one final question here. Briefly explain the framework proposed in this project and how it can contribute to the implementation and evaluation of European projects in general.
Okay, we had our main frameworks in terms of concepts and background ideas had to do with the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development Goals. the DCOMP 2.0, the European Digital Competence Frameworks, the inclusive education framework as a pillar of Europe's goal of social inclusion. And also we had some interest about the developing the Internet of Things in innovative school and agriculture practices, integrating them. So these were our main frameworks. And in terms of methodological framework, it was those key dimensions that I introduced: the collaboration dimension, the effectiveness dimension of the project's objectives, the management of curricula, and sustainability of the project's practices after the project's ending. Okay.
Thank you so much, Ana Cristina. I do hope that participants of this webinar can go to the website that Ana Cristina referred to. Maybe you can share the link in the chat too if you have that, because there's a lot of additional information to what we had time to discuss here. Warm thanks to you, Ana Cristina. And we continue. And I next warmly welcome Fergal McCarthy from the Kinsale Community School in Ireland. And you are giving us a presentation. So really looking forward to that.
Thank you, Michael. And just in the context of the presentation, can I just say that it's available to you to interject at any time, should you wish to seek clarification on any point that I'm making. And it's also, I hope to engage in the chat function should anybody have any question, and I also will engage with that in the context of my presentation. I also want to pay tribute to my two previous presenters on setting a very high bar in respect of the presentations on research. And I want to thank Sylvia and Valentina as well for all of the setup in respect of organising us this morning. In the context of the research that I wish to speak to you about, I wish to speak to you about a school and how our schools need to become research hubs and research informed. And I'm going to start at a very, very basic level of a child entering our school and the transition arrangements that need to be put in place with regards to that child and scaffolding that child for success. And allied to that, my role as an employer and as recruiting teachers, I have to ensure that those that I recruit and those that I employ are research oriented in respect of their practice and have an appreciation of what good quality research looks like. If I'm to teach John maths, there's two things I need to know. I need to know maths and I need to know John. So in the context of that child coming to our school, we are provided with really good quality information from the child's primary school, from psychological reports should the child have had a learning difficulty, educational reports relating to perhaps dyslexia, perhaps dyscalculia, and so on. It's really important for me as a school manager to ensure that that information is made available to each teacher. I cannot hide behind, as many schools do, around GDPR and suggest that there is some risk or some reason why a teacher shouldn't have access to this, or that the access to it is a really, really difficult process for them to undertake. That it's contained within an office that you need one key for and a filing cabinet that you need another key for, and that you must ensure that the file is returned. If you make it that difficult for teachers to access it, well, then teachers won't access it. So it's really important that the systems that we deploy in school are readily available for teachers, because teachers have a moral responsibility of ensuring that the best opportunity for the child in their classroom, well, then the teacher must be really, really well informed of the research that's there in respect of accessing that. There's also a really There's also technology to support what it is that we're doing. And there are a variety of tracker apps. And again, we need to be using technology to support what it is that we're doing in our schools with regards to supporting the child and on their journey from a research-informed perspective. We also have teachers involved in research, teachers involved in the acquisition of master's degrees, teachers that are involved at an individual level with a university where they elicit findings around good practice. And it's principals and school leaders often squander that opportunity by not inviting the teacher to share their research, to share their findings. And by inviting that type of initiative in our schools, we develop a culture of research. A culture is arrived at through the celebration of that which systems appreciate and which systems value. So once you give audience to good quality research, progressive, ambitious, research-informed practice, well, then you are on a journey of school self-improvement. We're really being assisted at the moment from a European perspective in that we have access to Erasmus, Erasmus Plus, and recently our school has applied for a Jean Monnet project, again in that active research piece. And where you have established that type of culture, you create a collective efficacy. And Anna spoke of the individual efficacy. It's the collective efficacy that Hattie speaks of. That where a collective efficacy is evident in our school will always be greater than the sum of its parts. There's also the responsibility that school leaders have around the sharing of systems-wide research. I take, for example, the PISA report. There's key findings in respect of the PISA report that any one of our schools can benefit from. That type of research that's available, that informs and provides schools with information that relates to a system, whether it's national or whether it's international. It should be made available by school management in the context of the improvement of it. And there's a really, really important piece in this, because when we first had our kickoff meeting around the this celebration of education during this week, and we had an address by the Commission, we were asked to stitch this program into the attractiveness of the teaching profession. And I fervently believe that this is core to the attractiveness of the teaching profession, because this type of inquiry-oriented, self-improvement, systems improvement, professional autonomy initiative can always improve what our schools do. And where that occurs, your schools become more attractive to teachers to be part of, and the profession by extension becomes a more attractive profession to be part of. But here's the central point of my presentation, Chair, and that is what I've spoken of so far around research largely speaks to the harvesting of data and the harvesting of information. Schools are really, really good at that. Schools are really effective at that. But perhaps where we could improve is the recognition that information retrieval of itself is not good enough with regards to school improvement. Doing the research on the data, harvesting the information, we need to go further. We need to reflect upon that which we retrieve. We need to make sure that we apply it. We need to make sure that teachers are constantly provided with the opportunity to reflect and improve. And as school management, we need to provide the time. We need to provide the physical resources. We need in ensuring that we're consistent with what it is that we're doing within this week. It's around seeking to transform our schools into communities of reflective practice. I'm just looking at the chat function, Chair.
Can I pinpoint something from
Please
there
do.
to you, Fergal?
Please do.
The first chat reaction was about maneuvering teachers, or we understood it so that you can build your professional community, so you have a voice in who are working in your school. Did we get that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and the chat was about that it's not that common.
Well,
in Europe that
okay,
we can build schools like that.
And I accept that, but somebody has to recruit the teacher.
Mm.
So there needs to be some form of criteria in respect of the selection of teachers. I'm really fortunate in that I have the capacity and authority to advertise a post in my school, and I sit on the selection committee that will select that teacher for my school. And that's a really important piece for me, because what it confers upon me is not just that the person is subject competent, but has the capacity to work as a community of practice, within a community of practice, has the capacity to be a problem solver, has the capacity to deliver on 21st century skills and develop those 21st century skills for the children in our school. But the point I'm making, Michael, is yes, I have that autonomy in my school, but in every system, somebody has to employ. There must be some screening mechanism or selective criteria for the employment of teachers. And these are the type of characteristics that any good school employer should be looking towards.
Thank you, Fergal. Is it okay with you that we continue with panel questions to you and also to Katalin and Ana Cristina?
I'll be delighted.
And these, I switch the pre-order that we had here based on what you said, Fergal, but I'm really happy about the pre-made questions that we had for the panel too. The first one, which I would like Fergal you to start, Katalin to continue, and Ana Cristina then to follow up from that, is who studies, schools themselves or external actors of school? I think you had a message there, Fergal, but
Well, yeah, thank you, Michael. I think every school has to have a school self-improvement plan. Every school has to have its own self-evaluative functions. Of course, it's important for schools to collaborate with third-level institutes and research institutes and any other body that can add value to what it is that we do in our schools. Of course, we're subject to external audit through the National Inspectorate systems. But National Inspectorate systems, in my view, the dial needs to be changed there as well, and moved from the audit culture that it currently has to a collaborative culture of seeking to improve the school and give oxygen to the type of improvement, as opposed to being there to do an audit check and to knock the school improvement as opposed to nourish it.
thank you, Fergal. What do you say, Katalin? Who do research, schools?
Well, I agree with Fergal that it is the school who need to be active in that sense as well. And absolutely agree that the collaborative culture is a key point to be able to make this kind of studies. Actually, I cannot give any additional content to what we heard from Fergal. Maybe the one that the question is, whether teachers and school leaders have time for that. Because, for example, in the Hungarian educational system, there is no time for that. Everyone has a huge workload and overloaded, and shortage of teachers. We don't have to choose from the teachers. We don't have enough teachers, and to send the teachers to substitute in different disciplinary where they are trained, that certainly will not have not even the quality of a normal education, but nor the studies of how things goes. So I do agree what Fergal said, but we have an experience in Hungary that we are on the lowest level of Maslow pyramid, and we don't even have the basics. I mean, okay, that's maybe a bit too much, but the lack of time is a huge problem in that sense.
Thank you, Katalin. What do you say, Ana Cristina?
Well, I totally agree with Fergal and Katalin, and in both this issue of a need of more collaboration in schools for a constant reflection process and how to improve the experiences with all the schools stakeholders and participants, students, teachers, assistants, parents. In Portugal, we have the similar problem. The hiring of teachers is highly centralized. There is a huge shortage of teachers right now, and a huge movement in contesting for better conditions and better salaries. So the schools have been agitated with that. Still, we have a strong self-evaluation process ongoing in schools, because they are quite associated with the leadership and the management of the school. So they're really embedded, and with high collaborative process, I think. But I think the problem is that this collaborative process that are developed in the schools, they don't reach everyone. They usually stay in a small number of teachers, a small number of students that are more deeply engaged in the processes. So I think not sufficient voices are heard within the improvement needs of the schools. Sometimes marginalized voices of students, of teachers, of families are not sufficiently heard in this process. And I think it's another issue that we should think of in when thinking about schools improvement and leadership for improvement.
Michael, can I just come back? Can I just come back in, Michael?
Of
just
course.
I mean, we speak of time, okay, but every school system requires to have staff meetings. I think that's a basic unit of communication that occurs. And if we're to look at the transformation of schools into learning communities, well, then one of the key takeaways here should be that every staff meeting, as an item on its agenda, should have teaching and learning at its core, and research practices linked to it. So let's not make the excuse that there isn't time. Let's place it as a central focus of our most basic units of communication in our schools, and that will have the effect of creating that whole culture within our school. It's too easy to say we don't have time. You make time.
Thank you, Fergal. I'm using all the power I have as the moderator for this webinar here. I very much love what you all said. We should think about research, practice, policy in new ways. Everybody needs to be a policy maker. Everybody needs to be in the practice. Everybody needs to be a researcher too. And how we have job descriptions, how we have time for doing one's work has to be rethought, so that there is the time for conducting research, for example. When I noticed that Romuald Normand is there among the participants. He's also a member of the ELNE research committee, and I had the pleasure of joining the school leadership conference in France, Poitiers, in December, and there came across with Kim Schildkramp from the Netherlands. They are working with wonderful documentation, with supporting daycare center schools to have what they called data teams, so that their universities supporting the practitioners to conduct research. And maybe I come from the university, so maybe we at the university should think research anew too. That it's not just us researching, but supporting not just in basic education, but also in professional development programs, people working in daycare centers and schools, so that they can do the practical research as they are working. And of course, it cannot be the same as in universities. But neither, I think we have the ownership to come from the universities to schools and daycare centers, etc., and say that we are now researching, we have the ownership, because the ownership should be there where the work is done as well. There's a follow-up question, but maybe we take the one that we had in the chat, and it's to all three of you. Dr. Sarah Fichnev in the chat wrote earlier, I think it was to what you said, Fergal. I think what you say has a lot to do with the degree of autonomy schools and school leaders have, and if they have a high degree of teaching responsibility or not. And then the last message we have in the chat is good points to Sarah. And let's ask. So I'm asking you now, Fergal, Katalin, and Torres, how do you deal with the research and the autonomy of schools, and how much time people have for conducting research as they are working as practitioners too?
Our core responsibility, Chair, is to the teaching and learning in our school. The school leadership, that is their function. That is the function of our board of management. That is our core responsibility. So if teaching and learning is accepted as being core to our responsibility, well then constantly looking at ways to improve and to increase the opportunities for teaching and learning to occur in our school must be examined. And that can only be done in an effective way if it's done from a research-informed place. So therefore, the culture that we need to develop in our schools is that our teachers commit to being lifelong inquiry-orientated practitioners. That's what we're looking for. And it's our responsibility to create the time, to create the space, to create the culture in your school that's the expectation, that's the value. And that starts at, and there's a really, really good project happening in Porto next week under FE. That starts around the induction of the teacher into your school. That's about creating habits. It's about creating behaviors. It's about creating expectations. It's creating professional expectations, professional standards. And there's a continuum to a teacher's professional career. And it cannot end with the certification or accreditation. It must be a commitment to lifelong research-informed, improved practice. That's the culture. That's what you need to create as a school leader.
Thank you, Fergal. Katalin, Ana Cristina?
Go
ahead, Katalin.
Thank you. Absolutely agreeing with Fergal, yet also considering the difficulties of the Hungarian education system. We would have a recommendation that maybe if European Union could give a program or establish a program where schools that could show either studies result that they perform themselves, or this kind of network-based improvement that we could see in our research. A good example could be for the other schools to move forward in that direction. So maybe it would be great to have platforms where school leaders can see each other's good examples. And maybe it would be good to support those schools who are able to make steps in that field. Either it is the research within the school or the network building outside of the education sector.
Thank you, Katalin. Ana Cristina?
Well, I also agree with Fergal. At least I was thinking about the issue of this culture of improvement has to be built and grow from the inside, has to be nurtured from the inside of the school and the leadership, and how those reflections about pedagogical practices are constant in the school, in the schools and the teachers' professional action. Okay, but the thing is, at least from the Portuguese context point of view and my own contacts with schools within this project that I spoke about and other ones, teachers feel thrusted into bureaucracy, and they feel demotivated for reflection because of the bureaucracy and the lack of professional conditions. What we believe from the reflection we've been doing in other projects that we've been engaging in, yes, I think the European Commission and the systems can create incentives to multiply collaborative and reflective processes in schools, but most of the times the schools themselves need to spread out the already innovative practices they have going on inside. I think that process, it's not sufficient by now. Some schools are really very good groups of teachers, very innovative, very reflective, and those teachers don't have enough opportunities to spread out amongst their colleagues and the community about those practices and really help to create a culture of improvement within the schools. So I think the incentives should go there.
Yeah, thank you, Ana Cristina. Thank you, Katalin. Thank you, Fergal. Thanks, Valentina and Monica from FE facilitating all this. And thank you, all wonderful people joining this webinar. And I have to show you, I have a lesson plan prepared. And this, I could more or less follow it, but not totally, because of you wonderful people there in the chat and the presenters who made this lively and authentically interactive. And the chat really steered how we had this webinar, and it's exactly as it should be too. And ELNE is about working together, policymakers, practitioners, researchers, educators, and we are trying to build something new. So I do warmly welcome everyone to the next webinars. There will be 2 more research corners today with 2 different kinds of topics, and we do hope that we can keep the atmosphere that we had here. Thank you all so much. We'll
Thank
see
you, Michael,
in
and
the
thank
next
you for
webinar.
excellent moderation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good work.